Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Raising Confident Girls. I'm so happy you're here today. If you are a first-time listener or you've been here lots of times, thank you for being here. My name is Melissa Jones, and I am the founder of Girls Positivity Club, if you didn't know that. And I was a classroom teacher for 23 years, but I've been teaching much longer in other settings. And this is a very important topic to me because I know firsthand what the back to school season is like. And so this is going to be a part of a mini series all focused on back to school. And so whether your kids are going back to school like they already have, they go back this week, they go back in a month, all of these things are relevant to think about with your daughter and helping her feel really confident, both inside and out. Because really what we focus on in the beginning, and I think it's such a comfort for both our girls and us, is the back to school shopping, getting all the supplies. If you have a girl going into middle school, it's the locker, it's decorating. They have to have all their things in place, and it's the outfit and the shoes and all the things. And so we're kind of focused on the sparkly nature of the beginning of the school year at times. I know when I was in that part of my life, my mom would take us school shopping. We would have dedicated time to do it. We would plan everything out. And so all of that is part of the process, I think, of settling into that transition from summertime to school time. And really, it brings a mix of nerves for many families and for the kids too. Like what the girls tell me is they're having a mix of feelings. Like they're excited, but they're also disappointed that summer's ending. They really want to see their friends. They're really anxious to see who's in their classes, how it's going to feel when they get to their new grade. So no matter what age the girls in your life are, there is typically a mix of emotions and a little bit of nervousness, even if they are confident at school and they have a good school experience, they like school, all of that. And then there's the opposite of like, if they are typically anxious about school, things can be heightened. And so I thought that dedicating some episodes to supporting the girls in your life around going back to school would be really relevant to this time. And if you're listening, you're like, well, my kids aren't going back to school yet. Still listen to these and knowing that any time that the girls in your life are going through some kind of a transition, as far as they're moving to a new place or they're on a break and they're coming back from a break or whatever it is, I think that we can use any of these tips during lots of transitions. And it's especially relevant, though, whenever our kids are going back to school. So whether they're switching schools, simply transitioning back into a routine, this episode is going to be packed with practical tools that can help you feel, and her feel, most importantly, confident from day one. And so before we get too deep into the episode, I want to remind you that the best way that you can support this show is by sending this to another parent or caregiver of a girl who you think it could help, because that's the ultimate goal. Is we are all, if you're listening, interested in and want to make positive impact on girls' lives. And we want to help raise a generation of confident girls who have more tools than maybe you did growing up, or definitely I did. And a lot of my motivation not only comes from helping the girls that I see today, but also in my past with the way that I struggled through school And just as a teacher, seeing things firsthand and how I know that we need to give girls some extra support. It's not that boys don't need it, but girls are definitely wired differently than boys. And so I hope that this episode really helps you give your daughter that, or the girls in your life, that extra confidence boost that she may need starting a new school year. So you've probably got the supplies covered, the backpacks, the pencils, the outfits laid out, all of that. And what I really want you to think about is her inner confidence. So let's talk about how to prep your daughter for her inner confidence. And the first thing is, like I said in the beginning, there are a mix of emotions. And so helping her name the feelings she's feeling. So in the first couple days, it may be total excitement. If you have a kid, like I said, who loves school, they just may be like, I'm just excited. Like I'm ready to go. I love the fresh start. And that's honestly something that I loved about teaching, was each year is a fresh start. And it just feels like such a fresh feeling, even if you're teaching the same grade level. And you have new kids, you have new, just all the things that come with like a new fresh start. It's kind of like a January for kids, like the beginning of a school year is like full of possibilities. That can be one way to look at it. And then other girls may feel like, I don't know if there's anybody in my class that I know. I don't know if I'll like my teachers. I don't know if the schoolwork will be too hard, especially if they tend to struggle academically in school. Like, what if the same thing happens last year where I don't understand and this and that happens? So there can be a lot of kind of what if thinking as well. And so this doesn't always show up in the first couple days of school or even the couple weeks, but I think it's important that we keep checking in with our girls and just say to them, like, what are the feels? What are you feeling? Is there anything you're feeling excited about? Is there anything you're feeling nervous about? And you can also normalize it by saying to them, sometimes I feel both at the same time, and it's totally normal. Like normalizing the fact that they don't only have to feel a certain way. And I think it can depend on the day for everybody because we're all human. And even if you could give them an example of, even in your adult life, of like, oh yeah, when I started my job, like I remember walking in the first day not knowing one person, and I was excited because I wanted to start this new career, but then at the same time I felt blah blah blah. But also keeping it focused on them, so giving them that relatability but also bringing it back to them, because that's the way that they connect with us. Like they need to know that we know how they feel. But I think there's also that danger in it becoming kind of out of touch and us saying, oh, well, back when I was in school, and they can kind of tune out. So there's that fine line of giving them examples from when we were in school, but also realizing that school is different today. And although there are similarities, it can often feel like it's a total different world that they see us living in, like when we were younger. So just keep that in the back of your mind too, of like obviously having relatability and giving them examples of your own school experience, and framing it in as positive of a way as possible without being dishonest about it. I mean, you can say that there were some things that were hard, but I think that they just want to be heard and seen. And if they don't really say much about how they're feeling, they're like, I don't know how I feel. Just be like, okay, well, I hope you have a great day. Let's put these things in place to help you feel confident. And just keep that dialogue going of naming how she's feeling each day. And that can happen whenever you do your normal check-in. So if it's at the breakfast table, if it's at bedtime, if it's in the car, and if same thing as what we've talked about in previous podcasts, is they may sometimes tell you that they are excited or nervous or whatever. And then other times they may not have much to say because they're not really sure how they're feeling. So I know for myself as a parent, what I've typically done if I don't get the answer that I expect is I will kind of push it. And then it becomes a wall goes up, and it's like, I don't want to talk about this. And so then you can create this unwanted conflict of like, wait a minute, I was just trying to be supportive, and they're just feeling a little out of sorts because they're not sure how they're feeling and all these things. And so just keeping it simple, taking it for what it is when they say it, asking maybe a follow-up question of like, oh, you're feeling excited? What are you excited for? And just letting it be. Or nervous? What are you feeling nervous about? And just, letting it be. And maybe even just saying, how can I support you? If it is a challenge. And if they say, I don't know, I just need to figure it out, being okay with that for the time being, knowing that you're going to come back around to it later. So I think for me anyway, I know as a parent, I can feel panicky whenever I hear something I don't expect, or I want to help and I don't want a helicopter, but at the same time, I don't want to be distant about it. I want to be checked in. So there's always that fine line of like, okay, what do I say when? And there's no perfect answer, but I think just keeping it as simple as possible and just letting it play out and just saying like how they feel, a follow up of like what's making you feel that way, and just keeping an eye on it and just being aware of their normal behavior versus a change when you notice that something might be a little off, but not making an assumption that that's going to be the case right off the bat. So, just thinking about like creating that check-in is so important, and it's very quick, and just helping her name her feelings and not being afraid of it and not being reactive every time they say how they're feeling if it's something that we don't think they should be feeling or don't understand how they're feeling, or just it's something unexpected. So they're not always going to feel excited, they're not always going to feel a certain way. So just having that as an open check-in is really important, especially at the beginning of the year. And then the second one is to bridge those summer skills to school. So you may be thinking like, well, my kid didn't do a bunch of workbooks over the summer. We didn't do a bunch of tutoring and things like that. So that's not really what I mean. It's more of the things that you noticed that they grew in. So sometimes it is very important for us to remind girls, I would say more than sometimes, how capable they already are when they're having negative feelings about something. So again, like I always say to the girls, feel the feelings. All feelings are valid. The way that you respond to them is what we want to support them in, but all feelings are valid. You don't have to feel a certain way all the time. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel happy, sad, excited, all the things. So sometimes we see growth in our girls in the summer and they may not see it for themselves. So I would see this all the time in summer camp. And that was a lot of social growth. So what I noticed with the girls was them meeting new people, connecting with new people, making new friendships, trying new things, getting out of their comfort zone, even if it's crafting, even if it's baking, like what we did in camp. Everything is with intention. So it's all about like, okay, you don't know how this is going to turn out. And you can really tie that into them starting a school year and being like, okay, you don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. You don't know exactly who's going to be in your classes. You don't know exactly how things are going to feel, but you are capable. And I've seen this in you in the summer. So it's reminding them when you jumped off the diving board this summer and you were scared, but you did it anyway. And then you did it more than once. Like you were pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. That was always something I was scared of growing up because I wasn't really a strong swimmer. Like I took swim lessons. I learned how to swim. I can survive in a pool, but it wasn't, and we even had a pool growing up, but it wasn't like a strength of mine and it wasn't an interest. So I was more interested in jumping off the side with my friends and being creative in the pool, doing handstands, playing mermaids, doing things like that was more my cup of tea. But I wasn't a lap swimmer and things like that. And so for me, going off the diving board was a big deal because I wasn't super confident in that way. So maybe bringing something like that you noticed about them, or maybe it's as simple as trying new foods. And maybe one of the ways that they bring a summer skill into the new school year is like, look at all the new foods you tried. If the school offers I know some schools don't, but a school lunch, maybe trying some things. Or if your daughter just packs her lunch all the time, maybe packing some new types of things that she is maybe growing into is like, well, you tried that in the summer and you liked it. What if we pack that in your lunch or something like that? I know that's like a very simple example, but my point is we can use what we notice was growth in them, no matter what it is. And if you're like, I don't know what it would be, just think about it a little bit. Like kids can change so much in the summer, especially with camp experiences and even just things that you do as a family and like pointing that out to them and reminding them that they are capable when they're feeling a little bit off with starting school or they're like, I don't know if I can do this. I feel nervous, things like that. You can say, remember when you handled that at camp so well? Remember when you tried the new food? Remember when, and you're then reminding them of like, oh yeah, you have done that before. It may not be the exact same situation, but just thinking of like times when they overcame something in the summer, even if it was as simple as trying something new, making a new friend, because those are big developmental growth moments for them. And so no matter what their age, you can always think about something that they did to show growth and then using that as an anchor to remind them that they're capable when they're feeling off, when they're feeling a little bit less confident in a certain situation related to school. So it's like that can be gold. And I think for me anyway, and I'm sure for you listening, anytime someone reminds you of a way that you've grown, so maybe it's your friend or maybe it's your mom or whoever it is, it's like when they remind you of a way that you grew, it just makes you feel like, oh, someone else noticed that, or I forgot about that. Yes, I can do that. So it just gives you that extra little spark of confidence that you need right at the moment that you need it. So that's the second tip. The third one is, and I'm sure you've heard this one before, but it's practice small transitions. So it doesn't mean that you have to all of a sudden, let's say school starts in 2 weeks. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden bedtime has to go to 8 o'clock. But what I've heard people say before is like backing it up in little increments so that they get used to getting up at the school time. So maybe it's 15 minutes, like each day it's 15 minutes earlier. And maybe you don't, maybe bedtime isn't your thing. Like maybe that's not the transition that you need to practice. But especially if you have a girl who is not a morning person or has a hard time getting up or likes to stay up late, maybe she's a night owl and it's like, okay, we cannot stay up until midnight on a school schedule. Like this is summer behavior only. So maybe we need to start easing into that transition. Or maybe it's that they need more routines with their emotional safety. So maybe at bedtime, if you've kind of gotten out of the habit because you've all been kind of in a flexible schedule, maybe it's creating those bedtime rituals again where you do certain things at bedtime and that starts to trigger like the school and trigger in a good way. It starts to trigger like the school mindset of like, okay, when we go back to school, here's our routine. So let's go ahead and start that now, or maybe even start just one part of it. Maybe it's packing lunches. Like, okay, a lot of times people will get a new lunchbox. Girls will want a new lunchbox at the beginning of the year. Again, it's that fresh start thing. I know not everybody believes that, but some people, I know my mom did, and that was something that was a tradition of my home. You got a new backpack and a new lunchbox every school year. And that was like to signify kind of a fresh start in all ways. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it just is, that was just one of the things that my mom always did. And so maybe it's packing the lunches and getting the things ready. Maybe it's walking to the bus stop, or maybe it's if you have a girl who is going to a new school, whether it's going from elementary school to middle school or middle school to high school or whatever that would be, or maybe it's a total new school. I have lots of girls that I know who have switched schools. And so it's visiting the school. And most schools have a designated time that you can go and see the school and do a tour and things like that. So there are most of the times those supports in place. But even if your daughter needs to see like the route that she'll take to school or the way that her classes will go, or maybe she needs to see her schedule all written out. If she's in middle school or high school, she needs to see a visual and she needs to walk the schedule. So you can always request an additional time if you have a girl who just needs that extra reassurance. And most of the time, like all they want, especially in that middle school time, is like they don't want to get lost. Like that's one of their biggest fears, or they don't know the combination of their locker. Like those are the number one and two things that the girls always say, besides like, are my friends in my classes? But those are legitimate fears that they have. And what I always reassure them of, and you can always say this to your daughter too, if she's at that age, is there are so many people to help in the first couple of weeks of school. Like the school puts those safeguards in place so that they are not counted tardy. They are not penalized for being late. At least there's some kind of a grace period, and there are teachers everywhere. So it's very different than like what they imagine in their mind is like, you are going to figure this out. And it's providing them too with those mindset shifts, or like, what do you need to say to yourself before you go to school? So that could be another thing that you do, is practicing the transition, even of, let's get your clothes together and let's take a practice run of like what the morning will look like. So then you can even act it out. And kids love doing this, like at any age. I mean, they may roll their eyes if they're older, but just doing a practice run of like, okay, let's pretend it's morning. You're in bed, what are you going to do first? What are we going to say to ourselves? What's a positive thought you can think? Blah, blah, blah. You can run through the morning. And this could be a couple days before school starts. This could be a week before. It just depends on your daughter and you and what she needs and what you normally do in your family. But it's good to even tell them, like, we're just easing back in one step at a time. So it doesn't have to go perfectly. Even if we practice this and you decide last minute you want to change your mind about your outfit, it's okay. We will figure it out. So it's just, again, trying a small transition and getting them back kind of into that routine. That way it's not like ripping a Band-Aid and it's a shock when they go from Sunday night, or Saturday night before school starts, they're staying up until midnight and doing their summer routine. And then Monday, it's like 6 a.m. It's like a huge shock. So just thinking about what would those small transitions be for you and your daughter. And then the fourth tip is to create that confidence anchor. So this could be a small object, a phrase that can steady her during those uncertain moments. So I always call this like a pump up phrase, or like a positive intention, a mantra, like however you want to say it. And it could be a word, and it could be something that they always come back to. Is like, my word this year is that I picked at the beginning of the year is courage. And I always ask myself, like, is this courageous? Like, do I need to do this? Is this courageous? And so they could pick a word. Like, what is a word that you really want to be this school year? Like a quality, if it's kind, if it's courageous, if it's responsible, if it's whatever it is, just letting them pick it. And then what I did, this is one from a different year, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. But I have a bracelet on that says empower, because I'm always trying to empower the girls, empower myself, empower my family, the families that I connect with. And so it's just a good reminder that it always comes back to empowerment. Is this empowering? And I'm not perfect at it. It doesn't mean I think I'm never going to not be empowering or not feel empowered, things like that. But it's reminding me, and having it on a bracelet, especially because girls love bracelets typically, and especially friendship bracelets, like they could easily make it. But it also doesn't have to have the word. It can just be a color. So this is purple. So maybe purple represents for me courage or kindness or whatever it is. So it can also be, especially as they start getting older, they become more self-conscious about how they're perceived by their peers. And so I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's a real thing. Like, that's really what they think about a lot, even though no one's really paying attention. They are focused on themselves, and we all know that, even as adults. But maybe it's a color, of a bracelet, and it reminds them of a certain thing. Maybe it's a little note that they keep in their backpack. That's a sticky note, a post-it note that they put, you can do this. It's that phrase that they want to continually remind themselves of when they're having that moment, or just get their brain into the habit of being their own cheerleader, because that's one of the biggest things that we can teach our girls, is that they need a confidence anchor of some kind, because they have to, yes, we want to be that support for them, but they have to know how to do that for themselves when we're not around, because we're not going to follow them around everywhere. And we're not going to just put notes everywhere they see and expect them never to do it for themselves. So yes, of course, write them a note and stick it on their mirror or in their lunchbox and things like that to remind them. But they need to decide what that is for them. And one thing I love doing in Girls Positivity Club, whether it's in clubs or camps, is we make positive visuals all the time. So the artwork that we do, anything that we make, we try and somehow incorporate it with a positive intention, a positive phrase, so that they can take it home and display it somewhere where they'll see it to remind themselves and to trigger that thinking of like, I can do this and I'm going to keep going even when things are hard. And so you can remind them that whether it's a bracelet, a little note, a symbol of some kind, like a lot of the girls like to put keychains on their backpacks. Maybe they create a keychain that's a positive, it has some kind of positive intention behind it. Or I've had some girls who carry like a little heart stone in their pocket, or some kind of anything that is going to have meaning to them is so important. So some kind of, I don't want to say trinket, like, because it's not going to be something they play with, but some kind of a reminder that makes sense for your daughter. And they all need different things. So for some, they need something they can physically touch. And especially like a bracelet, it becomes something they can be like, I can do this, you know? But it can also just be something visual that just reminds them of that they can do it, they can keep going, and it just gives them that little boost that they need when they need it. So whether they're having a good day, whether they're having a hard day, all of these ways of reminding themselves of that confidence anchor of like, I can do this, is so important to instill in our girls. And then the last one is celebrating micro milestones. So these are the small wins. So I'm not saying have a party every time they do something small, but reminding them that confidence builds with reflecting on their small wins. So a lot of times we want to reward kids for doing well on tests and grades and all these achievements and maybe scoring the goal, getting the winning this and that. But I want you to think about the little moments that mean something. So I don't mean overpraising, because I think it can become kind of like white noise if we're constantly telling them every single thing they do is incredible. And I know that of course, I am a complimenter. I compliment girls and all of that, but we want it to be meaningful. And so it's, again, with those check-ins, saying, what's something you felt proud of today? And it might be asking someone to play at recess. It might be that they helped someone find their class and they thought they were going to be lost in school, but actually they picked it up really quickly. And then they noticed someone else struggling and helped them. Maybe they tell you that and you wouldn't have otherwise known that. Maybe they invited someone to sit with them at lunch who didn't have a place to sit or seemed a little bit sad that day. Maybe it's they raised their hand in class and the answer wasn't totally correct, but they did it anyway. Or maybe they raised their hand in class, didn't get called on, but they raised their hand. So reminding them of there can be little moments to be proud of along the way of accomplishing something. So it's not always about the end result. It's about the little steps that get your daughter where she's going. And I think I know I can as a parent, forget to remind them of that. And that is just a really beautiful, simple way to remind them of all of their little steps that have gotten them where they are. So even if it's practicing whatever it is they're into, maybe it's their photography or their art or their sport, it's like, wow, I noticed your effort was incredible at practice today, or you have really been working on, making your eyes realistic in your drawings or whatever it is. So it's just noticing those things and pointing them out to them, and also helping them reflect on it themselves and by asking, what are you proud of today? And reminding them too that even showing up counts as brave. So when they're scared, even showing up to the first day of school, even raising their hand one time, like those types of things count. And they can be little acts of bravery that maybe they need to be reminded of, especially if they're feeling a little bit shy or anxious about doing certain things in school, especially raising their hand in class is like a super big one for girls, especially if they don't know the answer, or joining a new club, or meeting new people, or trying an activity they've never tried before because they're like, I really want to try this. I don't know if I'll be that good at it, but I really want to try it as an elective, as a club, as an after school activity, whatever it is. So I hope this was helpful. So this is part 1 of the series. I'm going to do 3 episodes on this. And, you don't have to solve every fear that they have. The most important thing that we can do for our girls is just walk beside her and reminding you that a confident start doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that it never has its wobbles. It doesn't mean that it's going to all go flawlessly every day of life. We all know, if you are being real with yourself, like I am too, there are going to be things that come up. Like, for example, today is actually my teenager's first day of school and he is sick. So he's never in his entire school career missed the first day of school, and he just did not feel well yesterday. And this morning he is like, I feel like death. Like I want to go to school. I want to do the first day. I'm like, okay, did not expect that. We packed the backpack. We made sure he knows his parking place because he's a senior. We made sure this, and that were all in place. And it turns out he feels like garbage. So that was a wobble that we did not expect. And he was disappointed. I was too, because it's exciting starting a new year, especially your senior year of school, your last year of your school career before outside of, high school days start. And so, yeah, what we need to remind our girls of, our kids of, is that they can recover from things, whether it's something that seems small, like not feeling well, obviously couldn't help that, to making a mistake, to feeling a little nervous, all these things, we can recover from them, and we can support them in that and teach them these little tips that will help them along the way. So share this with a parent or caregiver of a girl who you think this could help. And always, if you want to share with me how your back to school is going, I know we're busy, but I always want to keep that door open. You can send me a message at Girls Positivity Club at Gmail, or on all social media. It's Girls Positivity Club. And tell me what your favorite tip is and what's working for you, or if you're having any challenges with the back to school season. And until next time, keep raising those confident girls. And I hope you have a great start to your school year. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.